Wendy Kennedy. Welcome to Fear Unzipped. I'm so happy to have you here. And I have to share with the listeners something that's very meaningful to me about you. And that is when Fear Unzipped came, it came through me. It really didn't come from me. I really felt it came through me. And I thought, who do I want to have on? And you were literally one of the first guests that I thought of. You're a channeler, an intuitive, an empath. You have such integrity, and you carry the responsibility of what you do with so much respect. So I really wanted you, and I thought, well, Wendy doesn't know me. I'm going to reach out, you know. So I reached out, and I got a response immediately. But you were so busy and traveling the world and going to Egypt. But you stayed in touch, and this is what many months later, and you're on, and it means a lot to me. I just want you to know that it means everything to me. So
Oh,
welcome.
well, thank you. And thank you very much for having me. It's my honor to be here.
Oh, you're so sweet. So what we're going to do, I want listeners to listen to your backstory, kind of how you got to where you are. I know you've shared it many times, but there are a lot of people here that will not have heard your story before. So will you share that, how this all came to be, what you were like before?
Yeah. Well, it's hard to believe it's been 30 years.
Mhm.
And when I first started this journey, I certainly never imagined this is where I would be. I started having visions, and at the time, I didn't know what the visions were. Looking back now, I know they were past life related, but at the time, I thought maybe they were associated with the building that I was living in. I was living in this
Mm.
old building in Chicago, and it was turned into an apartment complex. And so I started doing some research just to see, I thought maybe it's haunted. And along the way, I came across channeling, and I did not know what it was. I didn't know anybody who did it. I just felt this really deep calling within me that it was something that I was supposed to be doing. And I can remember saying to my friends, I know this sounds insane, but I feel like I'm supposed to do this. And my friends were incredibly supportive, and they were the first to volunteer. They said, "Well, if you can do this, I'm in. You can use me as a guinea pig." And so I got a couple of books. And at the time, this was the early mid 90s. There was not a lot of
Mhm.
information out there. There were a handful of channelers who had books. And so I started doing some of the exercises. And I came from a theater and film background. I have a degree in theater and film. And, it was a great training ground for what I do today because it really got me in touch with my body. It got me to look at what motivates us to do the things that we do and things that I probably wouldn't have explored at an early age had I have studied something else. So it was a perfect place for me to start. And looking back now, knowing what I know, there were things that I experienced earlier on that were past life memories servicing and things like that. So I had been working on myself. And so I started to do some of these exercises, and I would have a very visceral response. My eyes would flutter and water, and I would tingle, but I could not get the words out verbally. And so I was doing other things. I was studying meditation, doing yoga, and along the way, I I would kind of stop and I'd go back to it, and I'd have these visceral responses and nothing would happen. So about 9 months to a year after that, I sat down and I knew I was supposed to have pen and paper that day. And I just put the pen on the paper and it started with automatic writing. And before I was just trying to channel verbally. And so I did that for probably about another 9 months. And I was hearing the words well in advance of what I was writing on the paper. And they said, it's time for you to put down the pen and just speak. And so once I did that, my main guides that I work with publicly, the ninth Dimensional Pleiadian Collective, came through. And they were waiting for me to channel verbally because they work with tone
Mhm.
and sound. So when I channel them, they sound different than any of the other beings that I bring through. And that is in part because they are modulating the open vowels, the frequencies. So it's as if you're getting a healing in addition to the information. But I actually work with a lot of different galactic beings, primarily beings from different star systems. I work with beings from Arcturus, Lyra, Sirius,
Mhm.
Cassiopeia. So it just depends on what information I need, the energies that I need to work with. But when I work with the public, the Pleiadians tend to take front and center. They're kind of the guardians for that. And there may be other beings who will blend their energy. And I think we're probably going to bring the P's in a bit, and then we'll do a language of light activation. And when we do that, you'll notice the energies will move, they'll shift, and that's some of these other galactic beings stepping forward to share their knowledge, their wisdom, their energy with us.
Well, I'm really excited about that. I feel a connection to the Pleiadians, which I'll explain to you a little bit later. So that's why it really resonated with me. But what did your family, your friends, your colleagues think of when you started to do this wild, kind of bizarre thing back then, channeling these beings?
Well, I think part of it was the age that I was. I was in my mid 20s. So, at that point you're kind of bold and brave but my family, my friends were incredibly supportive and they still are. So I'm very lucky in that way. And they're always checking in. I said, "Can you check in on this? Can you ask the P's what they think about this or that?" So I'm very lucky that way.
Your story is a little different than a lot of people that I talk to because a lot of people have had NDEs or near death experiences or experience, I mean, crazy trauma that you can't even imagine how people went through. What I kind of love about your story is that you sound like you had a really nice childhood. There wasn't that traumatic experience in your life, which I think it's important for people to know. You don't have to go through trauma to channel, to connect with your guides, or to connect with the beings that are all around you because they are all around us. Why do you think they chose you? Or have they
I
told
think
you?
I think it was contracted before I
Mm,
was born. I think I chose to do this to be a representative. There is an aspect of myself that is part of the Pleiadian Collective. And so I said, all right, I'll go down in physical form and I'll help share the information and the wisdom. So I think it was contracted. And I had a very, as you were saying, I had a very happy childhood. It was very typical. Um, there wasn't a whole lot of trauma and drama.
yeah.
But I was always drawn to the metaphysical stuff. I was always
Hmm.
drawn to UFOs and to ancient Egypt and Atlantis and that kind of thing. I mean, I would watch um, Project Blue Book and In Search of things. I'm dating myself, but things that were, the sources for metaphysical information back then. And even in school, we would get the Scholastic um, magazines to choose the books that we wanted. And I would always choose the ones on ghosts and UFOs and that kind of thing to read.
I was really similar all my life. I was a very scared person, very scared child, had severe anxiety, but I was very drawn to the metaphysical. And I never was scared of the metaphysical. I was more scared of this reality. and and I was picking up on other people's emotions and energies, thinking that they were mine. And seriously, I was so scared. And even the fact of doing a podcast and putting myself out there, I've always been behind the scenes. And so in my work in PR, so this is, putting yourself out there and bringing forward some things that a lot of people don't know that I experience. So, um, and then your acting probably helps so much because it makes it easier to be in the forefront, maybe to be your true self and be comfortable in your own skin. Because that's a
I think,
hard thing for humans to feel comfortable in our own skin.
yeah, I think for me, the piece of it that I was always fascinated by is what motivates us, what drives
Mhm,
us,
mhm.
and the stories that get told about that and how that can transform us as we watch. There's something that's very special about the arts. And yeah, so I think that background has helped me a little bit in terms of being comfortable. But like I said, I never would have dreamed that this is what I would have been doing. And it's something that is such a deep calling that I don't really stop to think about it. Occasionally, I'll
Yeah.
come up against a few things that are outside of my comfort zone, but I try to remind myself that, up to this point, the energy that I needed has always been there. They've always been there to support me, and I've trusted in that process. And as I've walked forward with it.
They're very loving, very supportive beings, and then messages that you put out because like I said, I think there's a real responsibility that you have when you're in the public eye. And I don't, in this podcast, I say I don't want to create more fear
Yeah.
in people. And I think some people that do this kind of work, they do incite more fear. And I really want to stay away from that. And that's something I've really respected about you because you, you share what they have to say, but it's such powerful, great messaging for all of us. And so when you're channeling, and a lot of people ask me, how do you know you're channeling? How do you connect to your guides? How do I know I'm not making all this up? Is there some words of wisdom you can share with people about that?
So the experience is going to be different for everyone, but
Mhm.
absolutely all of us have the ability to connect with our guides, connect with higher energy, Akashic records, the records of, what has been, is, and will be. It's just a matter of kind of getting ourselves centered. The guides say ground and heart centered, and then tuning in to the frequency that you want to receive. It's like being a radio where you're receiving this specific station, and then you have to turn the volume up. So as you first start, it might feel like your imagination. And the guides always say, just kind of go with it and ask for confirmation because it's subtle energy that we're working with. And that requires repetition. It requires us to be in that energy for just a little bit before we can begin to notice that it actually feels different than our imagination. Our imagination will feel flat in comparison to channeling because there's so much more information that is encoded in the transmission. So I might channel "It's a nice day," but what I know is that it's 70 degrees, there's a light breeze, the birds are
Mhm.
chirping, the grass is green. There's just so much more data that's in there that doesn't come out in words, but there's a knowingness that comes along with it. And as you start to work with it and practice, you begin to recognize the difference. And, you can ask for confirmation. And the guides always say that if you say, "Oh, I wonder, is this my confirmation?" Maybe you're seeing repeated patterns, or you overhear the same conversation being held, the answer, that you are asking, somebody else is asking it, and somebody's giving an answer in front of you in line at the store. And if you wonder, is this my confirmation, then take it as such, because otherwise the thought wouldn't cross your mind.
I ask for signs all the time. And when I get them, in fact, I posted one that when I was going to do this podcast, the guides were talking to me and they gave me the name. They told me, I wasn't planning on doing this, Wendy. This was not in my wheelhouse. And I said, well, give me a sign so I know that you're really telling me this. And I wanted an orange feather, which is a hard feather to find. That day, I was in my backyard and there was an orange feather. And because I find black feathers, but I don't find orange, and I wanted to make it hard. I said, okay, okay, I get it. And I felt very, very guided. And I'm telling you that orange feather is with me. It's like an amulet or something with me that keeps supporting me. Just that feather is telling me, hey, we're with you, we're with you. And when they pop in, it glides through like a whisper through me. It's not judging me in any way. It's just a quick whisper. Sometimes I have to write it down or I can't remember it. But when you're at, yeah, you want to say something about that?
Yeah, well, first off, that's beautiful. And second, that is how it is for me. It's a bit like a lucid dream. It will fade very
Mhm.
quickly. So I have to write things down. That's why I still do automatic writing for myself when it's something that I need to remember. Otherwise, yeah, it'll fade pretty quickly for me as well.
Yeah, so that's what I see the difference between intuition and those messages coming in and just your own ego, because your ego is going to say, it's going to throw in something that's going to say, oh, well, you can't do that. Well, that's going to be really hard, or no, that's how I can kind of tell the difference. When you're in rooms or in parties or in the grocery store, are you picking up on other people, or do you have boundaries on that? Are you hearing messaging about other people?
It's pretty rare, I think.
Mhm.
I tend to tune most of that out, and my guides are pretty respectful of me and my boundaries, my
Mhm.
energy. I don't want to know about everybody's stuff. A lot of times I can feel it.
Mhm.
But I tend to keep a lot of that shut down when I'm
So,
especially in large groups.
so that was something growing up and up into my through my 50s, my mid 50s, because I was picking up on other people and being very confused, thinking, well, these emotions must be coming from me. I'd feel this anxiety. Yet I was fine. I was trying to figure out what is it in my life that's creating this, but now it's so clear. And if I'm in an energy that doesn't feel good, I will kind of walk away from it because I don't really have the tolerance for it anymore, which is really interesting. Yeah, but that's me. Um, how did the light language come to you, which is very unique if people have never heard it before? It comes in very, very fast, almost like it's humanly impossible for a person to speak that fast. How did that come into you? And did that kind of freak you out when you first heard it?
Well, I actually started drawing the symbols first,
Mm.
and that happened very early on. I kept seeing these symbols, I kept drawing them. And I was working with Arcturians at the time, and I was like, what is this? And they said, well, it's a star language. It's the language of light. And back in, I think it was about 2014, the guides came and they said, it's time to start working with this. And I was like, okay, you're asking me to step outside my comfort zone. I don't know what that means exactly. And they're like, well, we want you to draw the symbols and we actually want you to speak it. And I had heard the language of light spoken through other people before, but what came through me sounded completely different. And it was this big push of energy. And it's kind of an interesting thing that I've noticed before when I channeled, and especially when I channel with other people, there may be another channel and we're kind of taking turns going back and forth, or if I'm doing a panel discussion and I can feel the energy building and they're just waiting to speak and then it pushes forward, it's time. So it's kind of an interesting thing to feel in your body. But with the language of light, it was the same kind of push. It builds and it pushes out. So there are many, many different beings who come through when I speak the language of light.
Mhm.
And sometimes they braid their energy together. It's like
Yeah.
they come in combination. And the guides say at this point, there can be 100 different beings coming in at once. So it's not just one and then it switches to another.
Mhm.
There are many, many beings. And the language of light, for those who don't know what it is, it's a source language and it's comprised of light, sound, sacred geometry, and cosmic information. So there are all these carrier waves, these frequencies that go into the language of light. And when we work with it, it's like a reference point for us. It shows us a frequency that we have access to. We just have to modulate our energy field to attune with it. And so it's like somebody asking you to sing the note of C. If you don't have
Mhm.
perfect pitch, it can be really hard. But if somebody plays the piano and plays that note, then you say, oh, that note. Okay, now I can sing it. You can reproduce it. So that's what the language of light is helping us to do. And these beings, as they're coming in, they're sharing their own how to's, how they work
Mhm.
through the very energy that we're trying to integrate, that we're trying to let go of our fears, our judgments about. And that's encoded in the language of light. And then the symbols, as they're given to me, the guides call that galactic light codes because I'm working primarily with beings from our galaxy. And so they're galactic light codes. And these symbols, they're kind of like kanji, they're concepts, they're not individual letters or alphabets. It's not an alphabet. And all of that is encoded in there. There's light encoded in there. There's
Yeah.
geometry, and then all of this knowledge and wisdom.
You can feel it. So when you speak the light language, you can feel it. You can feel the braid of frequencies. And so I wanted to share with you that ever since I was a little girl, little child, I doodle. I always doodle. One of the symbols in the symbols of life, the alphabet or what you call it, is a symbol that I used to doodle from the moment that I could pick up a pencil or crayon, and I do it to this day. And I when I decorate cards, I put it on. And one day I looked at your the symbols and I went, oh my gosh, that's a symbol that I've always done. And I found that really interesting. And I instantly connected with you and connected with your messages. And so I feel like there is some sort of connection there. But that really intrigued me. Um, Wendy, what do you think is a really big misconception about channeling?
Hmm. I think sometimes people give their power away
Mm.
to information that comes in just because it's coming from a being in a different dimension. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily better information. It's just different information. It's kind of like asking a friend for advice. Sometimes friends give good advice and
Yeah.
sometimes not so much. So we have to use our discernment. We have to decide, does this resonate with me? How does this sit with me? And I think that's one thing that my guides have really pushed very strongly from the get-go was to use discernment to take what resonates and leave the rest behind. Because if it is information that you need and it's just not landing for you, then it'll come back around in a different form.
Mhm.
And, eventually you're going to say, oh, okay, now this is the third time I've heard this information. Maybe I need to look at it. It's coming from three different sources, or, you'll get it. It will come to you. But if now is not the moment, then let it go. But it's really important not to give your power away. And everything that we play out at the human to human level in terms of our fears, our limiting beliefs, will play out interdimensionally as well. So
Yeah.
the guides say it's important for us to kind of deal with that. So if you find that you kind of shut down, that you have fears about connecting with guides, then look to see what that is. Is it a lack of safety? Well, if it's lack of safety, then you're probably playing that out at the human level with somebody else. Maybe you don't feel emotionally safe or you don't feel physically safe. So it's a cue for you to see that that subconscious belief is there and you can start working on that. What would it feel like to be safe in my body? What would it feel like to feel emotionally safe? And once you start to do that, it also makes it easier for you to open up so that you can connect with your guides.
So I have a friend that says she feels the guides are right there beyond the veil. They're right there. She can feel them, but she just can't connect. And maybe that is the advice that she needs is that what is the thing that's preventing her from connecting? So
Yeah.
that no, that makes a lot of sense.
Sometimes I can, that is responsibility. I can tell you for your friend, we have a lot of past lives where we have done some things that perhaps didn't go well. We might have abused some powers. We might have taken on responsibility that wasn't necessarily ours to take on, but we've felt a lot of responsibility, a lot of guilt. And so we carry a lot of shame from that. So as we start to bring these gifts back online, it can trigger some of these old belief systems that need to be integrated. That integration is really just releasing judgment. And so once we learn how to do that, we let that go, then that opens the gateway for us to make that connection. But you can ask yourself, what's the payoff? And sometimes it's just not even logical. So what payoff do I get from not making this connection? Oh, maybe it keeps me from being normal, and normal allows me to have community.
Mm.
Because that fear is there that if I tap into something higher and I start communicating, people are going to judge me and then I'm going to be alone. So we can have all different kinds of limiting beliefs that keep us from making that connection. But just ask yourself, what's the payoff?
I hear that a lot. And I know that losing community, losing friends, losing family. But I think you reach a point when you do this and you start connecting where the connection takes precedence over everything else because you're in this authentic, beautiful frequency that other things start to seem a little mundane, like mundane conversations. Does that make sense? Um, it's better to have two incredibly great friends than have 20 that are, don't really get you, but they're fun to go out for a drink with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that loses its appeal after a
Yeah.
while. But the funny thing is that as soon as you start talking about metaphysics or things that you've experienced, people who you never would have guessed believed in metaphysical stuff will start opening up and talking about it. I think that's kind of an amazing thing to watch when you have the courage to step out and just to be yourself. You also give somebody else permission to do that. And I've seen that happen over and over and over again. And there is a lightness that comes with it just from living your truth, being who you are, and seeing how that helps other people to rise. They don't necessarily have to believe the exact same thing as you, and that's fine. As you just hold that truth within you, then you don't find that attack comes, or you don't find that that person runs away. They just may not share that interest, but they care about you and they're there, and you can connect in other ways and different levels.
So interesting because that's exactly what I've found that I'll say something and I'll go, I wonder how this is going to go across. And somebody will say, I'm telling you, Wendy, that I would never think in a million trillion years would say something that was in a metaphysical voice. and and so that's pretty exciting. But we're also at a time when it's becoming a bit more mainstream. So I'm launching this podcast at a safer time than you did when you came out 30 years ago. To me, it would take a very bold person to do that, to kind of go against the grain. But you were so grounded, it sounded like, in yourself when you came out, and you had great support around you.
I did. And I had very early on, probably about a year after I started channeling, I met two women, and the three of us started working together. And they were channeling as well. They were already reading tarot and just starting their channeling journey. And so it was a great way for us to practice.
Oh.
We would get together almost every night for a year. And, in our mid 20s, instead of going out clubbing and drinking, we got together and we would just sit and channel. And while one person was asking a question, somebody else was giving the answer, channeling the answer. The odd man out got to listen. And, for me, I was hearing the exact same thing that the other person was about to channel. So it gave me confirmation very early on, and I had that support system there. But, in some ways, yes, it was a bit more outside the norm, but the internet was, well, in the mid 90s, it wasn't even there yet, but still very
No.
early on, it was in its infancy. So you didn't have this same kind of exposure in the
Mm.
same way. It just was a different time and a different world. But again, because it was so deeply seated in me, I felt so called to do it.
Yeah.
And, looking back now, I don't know how I did some of the things that I did again. Youth is probably part of that. But I just felt like I had to do it.
Yeah. So I say that to people. I'm in a group of women, business intuitive women, and there's a point where you have to just do it. You can't, it's just coming out of you. It's your authentic self. It's your passion. And I said recently, I said, I guess the worst thing that could happen, I could die. And that's not, so then I go to another dimension. But it's something that I just felt called to. I had to do this when there are a gazillion podcasts out there, Wendy. But I felt this topic was so important, the fear. Can we talk to the Pleiadians a bit about
Sure.
this very topic and see what they have to say about it?
Sure.
I appreciate
So,
that.
Get out of the way and I'll bring them in. Yes, hello, dears. This is the Ninth Dimensional Pleiadian Collective, and it is a pleasure and an honor to have the opportunity to connect with you. So, fear, let's talk about that. Um, so, for us, fear is not different than any other limiting belief. They're all aspects of fear itself. Oftentimes, we see you all give fear a specific frequency, but at the end of the day, all the limitations are an expression of fear from our vantage point. So, all of these things are illusionary. Your true divine self, which is who you are, it is the aspect of you having this physical experience. You just have covered that up with this personality, these thoughts of lack, limitation, and separation that say, oh, you're capable of this, not capable of that. This is true, that's not true. And it is that which carries the fear programs. We say there are two operating systems from which you experience reality here. One is through the ego mind, where the programs of fear, lack, limitation, and separation exists. And then you have the operating system of the heart. The heart does not have any of those filters. The heart is what allows you access to multidimensional information, to the higher realms. So at any given moment, you can move back and forth between the ego mind and the heart center. Now, the ego mind was necessary in order to play this game, in order to operate under the illusion of separation. And this is what you all decided to do. You said, well, can we enter into a game where we forget who we are, we go down in density, and then can we find our way back out? So this is what you're in the midst of doing. You're finding your way back out right now. And you move back and forth between these two operating systems. Right now, you have been so conditioned to think that you are your ego programs that you get a bit trapped there. And we're here to remind you that you are none of those things, that you are everything. You are one with all that is. You are a spark of the divine. You are infinite. You are all powerful. It's just a matter of you moving back into that heart-centered space where you can allow that energy to flow. So if you find yourself in the midst of fear, simply put yourself in your heart center. Think of something that makes you smile. Now, if you're really in the grips of it, we know it can feel very, very challenging. So you might have to come back repeatedly to this image. But if you create a practice for yourself where you are doing this on a regular basis, the times that you really feel in the midst of your fear, it will be much easier because you will have some muscle memory, so to speak, where you've done this so many times of returning to the heart that it will be easier for you when things feel really, really challenging. Again, it's moving from the operating system of the ego mind into the heart center. The ego mind is where all the challenge exists. The heart center is where all the solution energy is. So you're just moving between those two operating systems, and they run on different frequency ranges. So you're moving from the lower frequency ranges, even the ego programs that you might think are more positive, they're still in a lower frequency range than the energy that you access when you go into the frequencies of gratitude, appreciation, all that energy in the heart, that unconditional love. That's much, much higher than any of the programs that you will operate from through the ego mind. So it's a choice. We tell you pain is a choice. You can stay there for 30 seconds or 30 years. It's up to you. So if you can remember that you have that choice, you can acknowledge that fear, that limiting belief, and then move into that heart-centered space. Again, think of something that makes you smile. Baby animals are great. You are encoded genetically to have compassion and care for baby creatures. This is how you thrive as a species, that it is encoded in there for you to care for them because the proportions are different in babies. That's why you look at puppies and kittens and baby animals of all sorts, and you just melt your heart for all of you. You go, oh, it's so cute. And it's the proportions. And then as you grow and change, those proportions also change. But it is within you. And so it's a good thing for you to use. And usually when you find the right image, most of you will feel expanded, uplifted, tingly, warm. You'll generally feel like you've got a smile on your face. And that's when you know you've hit the right spot.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's a lot to unpack and so profound. What does the galactic community think of humans? Are we are very emotional beings. So is that a positive?
It depends on what species you ask,
Okay.
because the galaxy is quite diverse. All right. And just like you've got a lot of diversity here on the planet, you ask one person for an opinion, you're going to get one answer. You ask somebody else, you're going to get something
Mhm.
completely different. So it's the same thing throughout the galaxy. It is a dualistic universe. And so you have both extremes of light and dark. The higher you go up in vibrational range in terms of your dimensions, densities, then those extremes aren't quite as far apart. But where you are here, you've got black, white, and 1,000 shades of gray in between. Where we are, you've got black, white, and maybe 2 or 3 shades of gray. It's not very far apart. And it's just different. All right. So some of these beings, if you've got beings who are highly analytical, and here you are with all these emotions, they don't know what to do with that. So they can be a bit confused by humans. There are others who are just absolutely fascinated by you because of your creativity and because of all the emotions that you run. Earth is a grand experiment. There are thousands of worlds worth of DNA that were deposited here for you to utilize. And along with all of this genetic material comes the emotional memory of all the species who have donated that material. So if you want to learn about emotion, we always say, where do you go? You go to Earth. Earth, we call the planet of emotion. So you've got a huge wide range of emotional experiences to explore. On other planets, maybe you've got 4, 5, 6 emotions in those species, which is a bit difficult for you to wrap your brain around because you've got so many to play with. But that is how you are. You are highly emotional beings. And that was necessary for the grand experiment, because if the experiment is to see if you can come down in density and find your way back out, you need lots of variations and ways to achieve that. Because if you've got only 2 or 3 paths, it can be much, much more difficult for everybody to find their way to that specific path. But if you've got lots of pathways there, then it's much easier for a game that is not an easy game. All right, this is a school of mastery that you're in, and that doesn't mean that you're at the very bottom in terms of where you're starting out, your soul's development. This is a game that is very challenging. And so masters come here to this planet to understand emotion, understand the process of integration and releasing fear.
Yes, this is some call it a hardship post. But a beautiful one at the same time.
We
Absolutely
wouldn't go
beautiful.
quite
Let
that far. We wouldn't go quite that far to say it's a hardship post, because there's some really amazing things
Yeah.
that you have on this planet. We understand ice cream is quite nice. So,
Mhm.
you've got lots of wonderful things, but too often, because of your social conditioning, you focus on the negative. You've got lots of positive things that happen every day throughout the day, but it just kind of slips your mind. You don't really pay it much attention, but there are lots and lots and lots of really wonderful things that happen as well.
I think it's the most gorgeous planet. And I'm in awe every time I look at a tree or I look at an animal. And we are so programmed for negativity. And I'm wondering if that comes from our past lives. Is that why we kind of gravitate towards the negative rather than finding the solution in a positive outlook on something?
Um, that's a very, it's a long story.
Mhm.
We'll try to keep it brief, but there are beings who would like to utilize Earth's natural resources. And so they want to control humanity to keep you small. All right. So there's been a lot in terms of understanding human psyche and the manipulation of human psyche. And you can see this just in general in terms of your advertisements. There are certain colors that are used, certain shapes that are used, certain phrases and words that are used in order to get you to think and act in a particular way. They want you to buy their product. They want you to feel a particular way. You can see this. It's been used for decades on your planet. And so it goes much, much farther back. Um, but we don't want to generate fear for you. We just want you to understand that this has been going on. There is a social conditioning. So all of the news that you experience, whether it is mainstream or alternative, is negatively oriented. It's showing you it's broken. And we always say that if you had the positive news report and you were fed a steady diet of that on a daily basis, you would have a very different world. But there's a lot going on. And if you're interested to take a deeper dive in that, you can listen to our talk Frequency Wars that we gave. This period between 2019 and 2026 is what in the future is referred to as frequency wars, where there's a lot of vying for control of the way that you think, the way that you feel, what's happening in your physical bodies. And you ultimately have control. You have the ability to monitor how you feel in any given moment. What happens outside of you doesn't determine how you feel. You make a choice in how you feel. And you've got it a bit backwards because in the process of manifestation, the energy that you emanate is what is reflected back as your reality. So if you have fear programs running at the subconscious level, those are going out. Slow waveforms are going out. And if you aren't directing your energy, that is what is going to be manifest back to you. That's what you're going to see and perceive in the world. If you are making selections, today I want to feel peaceful, and you are consciously directing that energy is far more potent than anything that's happening at the subconscious level. And that is going to be the dominant energy that gets reflected back to you, and that which you will perceive in the world. So you will have experiences that will reinforce that emotional experience that you first decided you selected to feel. And that's how it works. It starts first on the inside, gets projected out and reflected back, and then reinforces what was already there. But you've lost your knowingness that that is first generated by you. You think, oh, this thing outside me happens, and then I have this conditioned response. And yes, in some ways it is a conditioned response because you have tied those things together in your beliefs. But that doesn't mean that that has to be the response when you have a specific issue. It doesn't mean you have to respond the way that you have in the past. You can make a new vibrational selection in any given moment when you're present. But you have a tremendous amount of power, and you hold all the cards here. So as you start making selections and how you want to feel, and you start creatively thinking about what you want to manifest and experience as your reality, you take your power back. And for those of you who haven't really claimed your power, you've just kind of been going on with the status quo and haven't really dreamed about what it is that you want to create and manifest. You've lent your energy to somebody else because you haven't taken charge of it. And so these beings have been using that energy because you've just been buying into it. And so you will start to take your power back, and like a house of cards, that old paradigm, that old system begins to fall. And that's where you're at right now. You're seeing all the flaws in the old system, the things that aren't working in your financial systems, your governmental bodies, your political systems, your financial, educational systems. So you're seeing what's broken. And the other part of that is that as you increase in resonance, your perception of time also compresses. So things feel like they've sped up. 20 years ago, think about how much data came to you, or even 10 years ago, how much data did you experience in a day in terms of exchanges and information that came to you? And now today, with the internet and the way that you email and phone call and FaceTime and videos that you watch, how much data comes in? So the way that we describe this is that in a 24-hour period, you had a specific amount of data that you experienced. So now you experience that same 24-hour period in about, right now it's about 4 hours, which
Mm.
is why many of you who are old enough to remember feel like you just wake up and it's time to go to bed. And you can remember a time where the days felt much longer and life just had a slower pace about it. But the beautiful thing about the acceleration of time is that you see patterns in a way that you could not see them before because it took so much longer to see the repetition of the pattern. Now you're seeing it very, very clearly and it cannot be missed, which means, oh, this thing again. We're not so keen on recreating this. So let's think about what we might like instead. This isn't really working for us collectively. So we need to change things. You can see that now. And so you can start making new vibrational selections.
Oh, that's so true. Things are happening so quickly. Manifestation seems to be happening much faster right now. What about the earth? How's the earth changing? Because it feels energetically, it's tangible. You can feel the earth when you're walking on it, when you're outside, the energies are swirling. What is she doing at this point?
She's also going through her own ascension process, just as humans are.
Mhm.
So, in terms of your earth, her frequency is increasing and she is sending you energy on a consistent basis, which is telling you what you need to know, the frequencies that you need to be in order to have health, vitality and balance in your lives. And when you get caught up in today's technology, it is not in balance with Mother Earth's energy. There is technology that is available that is harmonious, but you're not using it at the moment. But as you have a practice for yourself and you keep coming back to your heart-centered space, you can maintain your resonance and not fall out and entrain with the lower energy of today's technology. And that's really, really important because that's going to allow you to feel better and healthier within yourselves. In terms of earth and pollution and some of the things that you're doing to the planet, yes, you need to clean that up. But she is a reflection of you collectively, energetically, and you've got a lot of internal toxicity, the way that you think about yourself, the lack of honor that you extend to yourself. If you can't honor yourself and earth is a reflection of you, you're not honoring earth. It's like someone throwing trash outside their car. They don't have any self-respect. They don't have any honor for themselves, and thus there's none for the earth. And earth can change very, very rapidly in terms of cleanup. As you start to change energetically, you'll find new solutions for cleaning all of that up. But there is, and we will say this because it is important to know, there is another agenda that is also going on here in terms of global warming. You're moving through a sector of space which is rich in photonic energy, light particles, and that is exciting a lot of the energy of the Earth itself. And all of your planets in the solar system are going through a transformation right now. But you're not hearing about that because the story that you're being fed is that you are doing things that are creating global warming. And that specific piece is an agenda. It is a control mechanism. It's to get you to buy into some limiting beliefs. And you're constantly being told, you're killing the planet, you're killing the planet. And that has a very detrimental toll on the psyche. Um, it's not a way that is uplifting. It's not a way that's phrased generally about supporting and loving and extending kindness to the planet. It's a beratement that happens subconsciously, and that takes its toll. But there's also a money piece, a control mechanism piece that going back to frequency wars, it's a way to try to control and manipulate you. So there are two different things that are happening. One, yes, you need to clean up the pollution, but the global warming is something completely different. And as you go here, as you start to connect more with yourselves, you will start to connect more with the earth. You will know the things that you need to do at a personal level in order to support Mother Earth, to honor Mother Earth. All right. And then you can start to see, as you do that, you'll start to see some of the other things that are happening, things like weather modification, which are not really helpful. And there are lots of chemicals that are in uh, the product that is being sprayed in your atmosphere and going into the rivers and going into your food supply and all of this. But again, as you're living from a more heart-centered space and maintaining your resonance, you don't necessarily entrain with those things. So if you are encountering that in your physical structure, then the body can process through that if it's taken it in, or you just won't be drawn to consume food or water
Mhm.
or engage in activities that are of that lower frequency, but that requires you to make a choice about the frequencies that you want to hold.
Do you see humanity shifting, hopefully pretty rapidly, to being more compassionate, being less separatist and us and them and coming together? Do you see that happening in the fairly near future?
Yes, well, it's already happening because you are starting to see some of the behavior in your governments and your political system, and you're not necessarily buying into some of the stories that you've been told in the past. So you're thinking in a way that is more inclusive. You're starting to listen to other people in a better way. And we're talking about at the human to human level. All right. And again, this may not be the news story that you are being told. If you turn the news on again, that's meant to separate, that's meant to keep you entrapped in fear. But in your general communications, you're listening better. Many of you, it's not everyone, all right, because you've been so distracted by all the data coming in that you haven't always taken time for yourselves. So for those of you who have taken time just to take a breath and ground, you're far better listeners than you were
Yeah.
10 years ago. And it doesn't take a majority of you to create rapid change for the collective, because if there are enough of you that are taking just even 5 minutes, 10 minutes to recenter yourself, to be conscious of where your energy is, then you're much better able to listen to those around you, to hold a space of compassion, to learn that what somebody on the other side of the world wants is the same thing that you want, but the governments might have different ideas about how to get there, but the base frequency is the same. And so you're not just projecting out there this idea of who those people are, you're learning to connect at a more personal level. And that's also helping you. That is in part because of all the data that you're receiving, the way that you connect on the internet, the way that you all travel today. 25 years ago, it was not the same in terms of traveling and connecting. Most people didn't go more than a couple 100 miles away from their home ever, all right, let alone to another country. So that has also radically changed, and that's helping you to expand your mind and expand your heart.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us about navigating fear, how we can feel more authentic in ourselves and less critical of ourselves?
So part of that is shifting out of the mind when you recognize you're in the grips of fear. Just stop and take a breath and see if you can put yourself back in your heart center. Give yourself permission to move to that space. Now, if you've got time, which most of you, in the middle of experiencing that, you may not have the time. Maybe you're at work and you're experiencing it. So having 5 minutes for meditation or reflection isn't always a possibility, or to take a deeper process. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But if you can just take a breath internally and put yourself back in your heart center and know that that fear program that's there, you're going to address it and look at it later in the day. But for right now, you're acknowledging it and then you're moving into a new space. If you've got the time, we say give yourself permission to feel whatever is coming up. Just observe it without judgment, because that allows the emotion and the thought to continue on its journey. The moment you dislike something, you stuff it down, you try to stop the energy flow. And energy was meant to be in constant movement. So what we would say is to observe how that sits. What's happening in the body? Is the body hot? Is it cold? Is it numb? Is it tingly? Does your energy field feel contracted? Do you feel expanded? Just observe without judgment. And then what emotion is surfacing? Is it annoyance? Is it anger? Is it frustration? Those all feel different. You can give it a label. And then what's happening with the mind? Is it active? Is it quiet? If it's active, what's the quality of thought? Is it positive? Is it negative? And just observe without judgment. Your ability to observe without judgment is what allows the energy to continue flowing. So when you give yourself permission to feel without judgment, let's say it's the frequency of annoyance, and you're giving yourself permission just to observe it and allow it to flow. Every other instance throughout your entire life, even in past lives, genetic life memories, where that energy has been suppressed, it's like opening a doorway so that every instance of that energy can come out with whatever is you are feeling in this now moment, whatever was generated, whatever situation generated it. All right. And that's huge. So this is in part sometimes why you all notice on a scale of 1 to 10, when you look at a situation, you think you should maybe be feeling that emotion at an intensity of 2 or 3, but something happened and all of a sudden you just went from 0 to 60. All right. That's because there is suppressed energy that is of a matching resonance. And you just tapped into it and opened the gateway for that energy to flow. So as you are just simply observing, it's going to be like a mist where you just can't hang on to it anymore. It's like your fingers pass right through it. You can't grab it. And that's what you're looking for. And the longest that most of you can do that is about 45 seconds. If you're doing it for longer, then you're probably going back to the original story, the incident, you're replaying it, you're rehashing it, you're trying to put your energy on a now moment that you're not standing on, or you're trying to project into the future to figure out how you can avoid experiencing this energy again. So just bring yourself back to the present. And again, about 45 seconds is about all you all can hold on to it. Now, if it's something that's been there for a while, you might have to go through levels and layers of it, but you'll find that still that first round, it just dissipates and you can't really hold it. And then make a new vibrational selection. What do you want instead of that emotion? Oh, instead of frustration, I want to feel peaceful. Okay, what would peace feel like in my body? And just give yourself permission to explore that. What would it feel like? Imagine that. You can say, I am peaceful, or I wonder what it would feel like to be peaceful. Either statement will put you in alignment with the frequency. Sometimes the I am statement can be a little much because the ego mind can get triggered. The ego says, oh, we're not that thing. No, 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 no. But if you say, I wonder what it would feel like to be that thing, then the ego doesn't feel threatened and it doesn't get activated in the same way. But both statements will put you in resonance with the frequency.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful practice. Thank you so much for coming and joining us and answering these questions. They've been so helpful and so
You're,
wise.
you're very welcome. We'd like to leave you with the language of light activation. And this is really to help you to open up, to perceive things in a slightly different way. So if you have fear that's getting activated and triggered, this will help you to see things in a different light, to elevate your frequency. So instead of experiencing the challenge energy, you can start to experience the solution energy. Whenever you create something, a negative experience, a positive experience, it doesn't matter, you create its polar opposite at the same time because they're two sides of the same coin. And they're in different frequency ranges. So if you're experiencing a challenge, you've already created a solution. You just have to align your consciousness with it. You have to be able to perceive it. And that is done through going through the heart. You can allow yourself to feel that negative stuff, that lower stuff. And then as you're in that heart-centered space, you can align with the solution energy to see what it is that you need to shift in terms of your belief systems or what actions you might need to take in order to sustain alignment with the frequency that you want. All right. So this is what the language of light is meant to help you with. So as you go, there's nothing that you need to know or do in terms of the language of light. We often recommend that you listen to it several times because the more you listen to it, the more you become aware of the subtle energy and you can recognize it when it shows up in your physical reality. So if you're looking for solution energy, then as you are embodying this, as you're feeling it, as you listen to the activation, then you sense it when it's in front of you in the physical world. It might not look like anything that you imagine, just as you were saying, Sandi, that you didn't really expect this to be your reality. All right. But it holds the qualities that part of you wanted, all right, to explore and experience. But the shell of it, the outside of it, didn't necessarily look like what you had anticipated. And when you can stay present and work with the subtle energy, you begin to recognize that and you create in even bigger and better ways. All right. So um, take a deep breath. We'll see where we go.
Ishakuto ar meribirika de berjukati ita ar meribirika tarshkata ar meribirika de berjukata ta ar minimine duru in meribirika de berjiji meribirika de jukata meribirika de berjukati hisa ata ar meribirika de betka de berjukati hasa ata ar meribirika ta ar minibirika patka de berjukati titi mbata de de wele berjukata patka de berjukati hisa ata anda aruro thana karjika de berjukati hisana ishana katara or berjukata patka de berjukati hisana katara Take a nice deep breath. Edu miri bijoda de inda de ida de idur biri bijoda de inda de were jeto uru jekat bedi bijoda miri bijoda betakata hata addu miri bijoda de inda de ar biri bijoda betakata inda reji didi biri bijoda betakata hata ar biri bijoda betakata ide ibrijete de ida de o tata ar biri bijoda betakati hisanna nana kodoro biri bijoda ar biri bijoda betakata hasa aitera ar. And take another nice deep breath. So, dear ones, this is where we will leave you. As always, take what resonates, leave the rest behind. If it's information that you need, it will find its way to you. You can connect with us directly. You don't need Wendy. Just ground, heart center yourself, ask your question, and listen. And then just be open to receive. If you wonder, oh, is this my answer? Is this it? Ask for confirmation. Oh, is this my confirmation? Then take it as such. All right. And as always, we are around, we're watching, we're waiting, and we're sending many, many well wishes.
Oh, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
It moves me in a way that I can't even explain. I can't. But when I hear light language, it penetrates every cell of my body. And I'll listen to that over and over again. And I highly recommend that listeners listen to it over and over. It grounds me in a way. It's just magical. It's magic. I believe in magic. So
And everybody's going to have a different experience with
right,
it.
right.
So, and that can be because of a lot of different things. It can be the frequency that you're in. Maybe you're already a matching resonance for that. So maybe you don't feel a big shift, or maybe you're just not ready to move to that. Maybe there's some other integration that needs to happen first. Maybe you'll have a really strong reaction one day and then you listen the next day and it's not the same. So it's different for everybody every single time that they connect with it. And it is a living language. So it's encoded. And for the guides, as they bring through this information, they don't experience time in a linear perceived reality. So they're with us present every single moment. So we might go 2 weeks. For them, it's just the next moment.
Exactly.
And the information that we need is going to be present and encoded in there. So as you need it, it will be there, and it can morph, it can shift, and it can change.
Beautiful, beautiful, Wendy. Okay, this has like flown by. Talking about time flying, it just has flown by. I have a few questions I ask all the guests. So can I ask you those questions now? Or is
Sure.
there anything that you would like to say before we get into those questions?
I'm a little spacey, so
Oh, I know. So let
you
me
can.
let you that was something I was going to ask you. Are you sitting in the background when that happens? When they channel through you, are you kind of sitting in a back seat, or are you very aware of what's going on, or do you remember maybe a few words?
I'm aware at the time of what's going on, but it can be like a bit of a lucid dream. If it's
Mhm.
something that's important, maybe it's new information or information that's pertinent to what's going on in my life, like those bits and pieces, I kind of try to hang on to a bit more to remember. But generally speaking, most of it's faded even now.
Mhm. Yeah.
If you say, "Oh, we talked about this," then I'll kind of remember, "Oh, yes, we talked about, that and this is what they said." But yeah, to have a very strong recollection of it all, no. It's a bit
Yeah.
like a lucid dream.
Yeah. It kind of floats through, kind of vaporizes through. Can you answer a few questions, or would you like to?
Sure.
Oh,
I
okay.
can
Okay.
try.
Okay. Okay. Let's give it a shot. I'm just curious, what's your number one strategy that you go to when you're feeling stress or mental distress of some kind? That's kind of an
Uh,
instant thing you can do.
Heart center. I do that a
Mhm.
lot. I'll come back to the heart and breathe. Practice breathing techniques, deep breathing, those two things. Very simple. Grounding. I have grounding mats. So if I can't get outside, I'll go sit on a grounding mat.
My feet, I have bare feet right now, and they're on a grounding mat while I talk to you. That's really important to me. I do a lot of grounding. Is there a life-changing moment that shaped who you are today?
Oh, there's so many, I
I
think. And
know.
and sometimes it's the subtle stuff. I
Mhm.
think that we don't necessarily recognize that pivotal moment until we look way, way back. It's not always that big, thunderous experience. So I can't say that there's just one for me. It just kind of seems like it all built and slowly unfolded.
It's interesting because I can look back on something that somebody said to me 5 years ago, and it relates to what I'm doing now. And back then, I would have gone right over my head. And then I just thought, actually, yesterday, I thought, oh my gosh, that's what they were talking about. So the life-changing moments, I think, are happening all the time. We just
Yeah.
don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times people, you hear about people who have near death experiences and these dramatic things, but, not all of us have those massive experiences where the rug gets pulled out from under us and we have to go in a completely different direction. So it just depends on what the soul wants. The soul says, "Oh, I don't really need that.
Right.
Let's," and sometimes it also depends on how quickly you're picking up the cues,
Mhm.
how quickly you're listening. The guides always say drama happens when you're not paying attention to get your attention. So if we're not paying attention, we tend to get those high drama events. So sometimes if we're paying attention, we make those choices that slowly put us on the path that we want to be on.
That's a really good quote. Um, what does a successful life look like to you?
I think it's about connection,
Mhm.
feeling peaceful, happy, healthy, and the people in my life, the connections that I have. That's success.
Yes, that absolutely resonates with me. Complete this sentence. It's the last one. In the past, I was, and now I am.
Hmm. Gosh, I don't know quite how to answer that
It's okay.
one.
That's okay. That's okay too.
Oh, there's nothing that's really popping into mind. It's funny, actually, what pops to mind is Atlantean stuff. I
Mm,
think my Atlantean memories are some of the strongest, and I've carried a lot of that heaviness around with me for a very long time. And I just went to Egypt back in October, and I had been 25 years prior, and to me, that's all connected to Atlantis. So I feel like that freed me in a lot of ways from a lot of the
yeah.
guilt and blame that I carried. So I'd say in the past, I was over responsible.
Mm.
And now I'm maybe a little more balanced.
Oh, perfect. That's perfect. Wendy, it's just been an honor, a joy talking to you, and time has flown by. Thank you so much for being on Fear Unzipped. I can't thank you enough.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was really a joy to talk to you.
Oh, you're so sweet. And I hope to talk to you again soon. Take care. Thank you so much. And sending love. Mwah, sending love to you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.